Have you ever used a real guitar amp, dialed in a really good sound in 2 seconds, but then some other time you've used the same ampsim on a computer and you're like, why is this so weird? Why is it so hard to dial in when the real amp is really easy to use? Don't worry, I feel the exact same way sometimes, and I've got a couple tips and theories about this phenomena. So today we're going to take a step back and have a look at dialing in a real ENGL Fireball amp over there versus dialing in the same ENGL Fireball amp inside of an ampsim. Yo everyone, welcome to Amps, Pedals and Pickups. It's your boy Nathan. Now first up, if you just want to skip to the sounds of everything, then use the time codes below. But first I want to talk about what I think is going on here. So what I find when I'm demoing real amps and pedals, my brain doesn't question anything. As long as the gear is in good working order, everything's hooked up properly, you're like, there's the real amp, there's the real pedal, you move some stuff around, you get it all to a good place, you get a good sound. There's only so much tweaking you can do, and if you're moderately experienced with amps and pedals and all that stuff, you can get to a good sound pretty quickly. Now when you do the exact same thing on an amp sim inside of the computer, instantly, there's a lot more variables into the mix. You know, instead of plugging into an analog amp, you're plugging into some combo of recording gear which all has different specs. Then the guitar software also has different input specs, like Neural DSP is different to Helix. On top of that, you have the quality of the amp sim. You know, some companies do things great and some are like just sort of okay stuff. On top of that, I think you've got the stock cab IR that most amp sims use. They can be hugely hit and miss. Now there's more differences and stuff that I could go on about, but just looking at those 4 things alone, that's already a bunch of stuff to think about in the digital realm, which you don't have to think about with the analog stuff. And I think having these kind of floating points is one of the bigger reasons that these niggling questions sort of enter our brain of like, why can't this amp sim, is this possibly sounding as good as the real amp, or is something going wrong here? I just don't know. I just don't have a true north with this stuff. So I'll keep talking more about this, but let's have a play first. Now with these tones, I'm not here to aim for 100% accuracy or pull out some mixing tricks to get things like as close as possible. I kind of just want to take a step back and go, hey, if my amp is on these settings, would the plugin mostly match it? And vice versa, if my amp sim was set to these settings, would owning the real amp and having all this analog gear be crazy different? Or is it like roughly the same as the amp sim? Alright, so just to walk you through the amp setup, we'll take a look here. We're running STL Amphub, the ENGL Fireball 60 there. I've got the gain and master volume set to about 3. That's typically what I run the normal amp on, so I've got that there. Tone stack all at noon. Stomp boxes, I'm running the T9 drive, TS9 drive, but I'm running the JHS Bonsai in the exact same mode into the ENGL Fireball. If there's one hard amp to film, it is this ENGL Fireball, because it's got that mirror finish. If you don't shine a light on it, you can't read what the settings are. And if you shine a light on it, it's just like you're seeing into the sun. So apologies for that. It was really hard to balance out. But those are the settings there, all at noon. And as far as impulse response goes, I'm running an instance of Cabinetron. I'm using the same IR, just keeping everything as streamlined and neutral as possible. Yeah, so everything's as default. Let's just hear how the amp is sounding. And the amp sim. Man, like I said, we're doing a zoomed back thing today. I'm not trying to get 100% the same tone, but man, when all things are equal, when this amp sim is dialed in to its optimum input gain and everything else is the same, that is so close just straight off the back. I can hear some micro differences, like there's a bit more low end, something going on with the real amp, but like I said, that's the last 5% stuff. So that was the first test, just having everything on default, seeing how they come out. So I'm going to dial in a tone on the amp, and then we're going to move the amp sim around and see if it gets to the same sort of place. So let's hear the amp tone, and then we'll hear how the amp sim's coming up. I mean, once again, 95% stuff that is massively in the ballpark. I'm going to crank the treble just to hear some extremes on this. All right, so even though this tone is sounding a little bit foul, let's see how the ampsim keeps up with it. Man, so close, so close. All right, I'm going to zero everything out and dial in a tone on the ampsim first, then we'll match the amp second. All right, I've dialed in this crazy tone, lowered the gain, up the mids, just something I wouldn't do, crank the presence, just going to hit some extremes here, because like I said, I want to see how the amp reacts. So. Dial the amp in. All right, so I've just lined everything up as best I can. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get the dials exactly the same. I think the dots don't really line up the same. I don't know, things are a little bit different. Anyway, so this is the amp sim. We'll see how the amp comes out. So the amp sim's definitely more gained, but it's in the ballpark. It's massively in the wheelhouse. Half the reason why I did this video is just like, I remember sitting back thinking when I have the amp sims, like, oh, if only I had the real amp, you know, things would be so much different, so much better to dial in. But you sort of get this comfort that sometimes the amp sims can be super faithful, 90, 95% plus. And, you know, we can tweak this thing, you know, it's missing a bit of gain. So I just tweaked some stuff on the amp. I'm not even too sure. I'll have to check it in post how different the sounds are. But to me, in the room, these sound pretty damn close. So once again, today wasn't how close of an amp sim is the STL ENGL Fireball 60 to the real thing. Turns out it's great, but this whole thing is sort of like an exercise for yourself in just reference checking your amp sims against real amps. Just getting that comfort, that peace of mind that when you use it, things are sounding as optimum as possible. So now I know that when I pull this up and have my favorite IR or whatever IR I'm dialing in, that is a faithful recreation of an ENGL Fireball 60. So yeah, just to recap on everything, to maximize your sanity on amp sims, if everything's sounding great, then that's awesome, you know, everything's good, you don't really need to worry about this stuff. But if things are sounding too undergain or too overblown, then check your input levels and compare it to the input levels that the plugin expects. I've got links below for all that sort of stuff. Now, if the levels feel fine, but no matter what you set the bass, mid, treble, presence to, something just feels too woofy or way too bright, then I'd swap out the IR to something that you're familiar with. And the last thing to help out is just referencing. You know, if you have the real amps and set up at home, then that's awesome. You can spend some time just like what I'm doing here with these things. But if you don't have the amps at home, then another good referencing thing you can do is just hunt for that amp on YouTube for some high quality videos. Try to match their settings somebody else is doing and see how that holds up on your amp sim. You know, it's never going to sound identical, but it should be in the ballpark. If it's crazy different, then you know that there's a problem somewhere in that chain. And look, if you're completely stuck and you need a hand, like I said, you can join my Discord, share your terrible tones with us, and we can see what's going on and hopefully help out. And the best part about doing these sanity checks is once you've done it and mentally sort of signed off, you kind of don't need to do it again. Because, you know, even today, based on this video, what I'm filming here, I now know that the Amphub ENGL Fireball sim is super close to the real deal. I never need to check it again. As long as your levels are good at home, you can also experience this same kind of thing on your setup. So yeah, that's about it. You know, as always, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, and I'll catch you on the next one.